guest. He is the member for Fairfax on the Sunshine Coast and the Shadow Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Good morning, Ted O'Brien.
Good morning, Bill.
There's a lot of stuff to get through, but let's start with the big overall view, first of all. Is this what you're expecting out of this?
Well, nothing surprises me when it comes to this Labor government, Bill. I tell you that. I wasn't expecting much good to come from this, a 90-day review that took 200 days, but it's worse than I thought it would be. This spells bad news for the people of southeast Queensland, especially anyone who's going to be travelling between Brisbane and the Sunshine Coast over the next couple of decades.
Let's talk about the rail project. This, I don't know, this just seems to get kicked around, kicked down the road, kicked left, right and centre. It's now delayed. What's your understanding of it? So it's delayed, it's going to be reassessed and rescoped, all that sort of thing. What does it mean?
Well, I think it means death by a thousand cuts. We had this project in the bag, $3.2 billion, a new rail line that would go all the way through to the Maroochydore CBD. Moreton Bay area, Sunshine Coast area, the fastest growing regions in Australia, with population growth just booming there. This was our opportunity, and we used the 2032 Olympic Paralympic Games to get this project. We had 50% locked in the federal budget. Labor came in, they promised to honour it. And then an 18-month delay and dithering in the midst of a hyperinflationary environment where steel, cement, labour is all going up by 40, 50% over that period of time. Then they turn around and say, you know what, I think this might be too expensive. So what they've done now is they've said, we'll continue with some planning, which includes the possibility of rescoping, code for we're going to change it all yet again. And then we'll think about construction. Now, 2032 games, Bill, these projects, as you know, take years. We had everything lined up. This was part of how we carried the people of southeast Queensland to support the games. And now we have Labor basically saying, no, it ain't going to be done. And so this is a serious risk, not just for us domestically, but it risks a real embarrassment internationally come 2032.
Is it a broken election promise, or is it something they have to look at managing? Is this something that shouldn't have been on the board to be delayed and held back?
It is a broken promise. I mean, even on the Sunshine Coast, we had local Labor candidates making it very clear publicly that, no, Labor's on board with this project. Yep, absolutely, we're going to do it. And then, the new Albanese government, they locked it into their own federal budget, and so they were locked in. Now they're just kicking the can down the road. And it's all about timing, Bill, right? I mean, you followed, because you've been a big champion of following the games. We leveraged the 2032 games as the catalyst to get this infrastructure. And that is what drove the arguments in Canberra, and I know that because I led those arguments. That got the deal over the line. That unlocked the money. That got us the commitment. But Labor's saying no. So where does that take us? What is the catalyst to get this done now that the timeline is bound to go beyond 2032?
Just digressing off this for a minute, where are we sitting with all of that pipeline, that Olympic pipeline of work and legacy projects? It seems like no rubber's hit the road. We haven't even got decisions to, let alone, as you said, these things take years to do. And I don't even know if we've even got out of the blocks yet.
No, they haven't got out of the blocks yet. I mean, there's $7 billion allocated between the federal and the state government when it comes to venues. But we all know that the reason we went for the games and the reason southeast Queensland people backed the games was transport infrastructure. And you might recall, when we were in government, the coalition, we agreed to a 50-50 partnership with the state government, and that included for transport infrastructure. Since then, Albanese and Palaszczuk ripped that up. Nothing has happened. And now this core project that was going to be able to enable things for the games, it's just not going to happen. So the marathon in 2032 is on the Sunshine Coast. Marathons start about 6 a.m. in the morning. So what? We're going to have all the visitors from the world who are going to be based in Brisbane. What are they going to do? All get on the Bruce Highway and try, at 3 a.m. in the morning and still run late? I mean, this is what we're looking at. But they couldn't give two hoots. Basically, we will get diddly squat, and unfortunately, Palaszczuk and Albanese will be long gone, so they couldn't care less. But the people of southeast Queensland will care. And I can promise you the people of the Sunshine Coast, they absolutely care.
Yeah, you've got another, off the Olympics, but on to a couple of other things that have actually been axed altogether, just for your constituents. That's the Mooloolah River interchange and the Nicklin Way 3rd Avenue connection at Caloundra. What impacts will that have that they've been taken out altogether?
Bill, this will have a big impact, not just on locals up the Sunshine Coast, but those who visit. These are very, very congested areas, and they're also dangerous. So it's bad for congestion. It's bad for safety. The Mooloolah River interchange, for example, there's a thing called the Sunshine Coast motorway. Locals up there know all about it. And that road has enormous problems. And the MRI, Mooloolah River interchange, was meant to bust the main problem with that. It is the busiest, most dangerous piece of infrastructure. The state government, by the way, should be looking after the whole thing. But they weren't acting, of course. And so we were able to carve out $160 million, 50% of that, to force the hand of Palaszczuk and co., who eventually were embarrassed. They had to come to the party. Land has been resumed. Families have been moved out of that area in the midst of a housing crisis, no less. So we have less housing there to make way for this huge upgrade, which is $320 million all up. And now federal Labor says, up your nose. That ain't happening. And, of course, Palaszczuk will have crocodile tears and pretending it's all just so difficult. So that gets scrapped altogether. Catherine King, the infrastructure minister,
she hasn't minced her words when she said the infrastructure pipeline in Queensland has been left in a sad and sorry state. And I don't know if you've read the comments from the State Treasurer, Cameron Dick, but he said we will not cooperate with Catherine King on these cuts and needs them to be basically taken back.
Well, there's no doubt that Catherine King and the Albanese government as a whole have a lot to answer for. But I don't give Bailey and Palaszczuk anything on this. I mean, seriously, this is just crocodile tears. Where have they been over the last decade on this? The amount of times I had to fight for things, and they were blocking me when I was fighting to get money for Queensland. Seriously? No, as far as I'm concerned, this is Labor theatrics. Bailey, Palaszczuk, they're as bad as King and Albanese. They are as culpable in this, and they deserve no credit whatsoever. Now, it's too little, too late. They come out and say, oh, hang on. Seriously, they have been delaying everything themselves. They fought us every single inch when it comes to infrastructure. The comparisons of New South Wales state spend, Victoria state spend on infrastructure compared to Queensland tells the entire story. They've been spending over the last decade. We haven't in Queensland. That's on Labor. Now they've got their mates in Canberra, and our state gets bugger all, mate.
Yeah, well, I don't know how good of mates they are, but so you reckon this is crocodile tears? Tim Arvia from 9 News said earlier that there's speculation that this is all about Albo because they've only got 5 seats in Queensland, the federal Labor government. It's all about him keeping this off the table and then trying to put it back on the table prior to maybe the next election to make himself look good, pump his tyres up to try and win some seats up here. It's all a political game.
That's interesting, Bill, and that could very well be the case. I mean, if Labor are good at anything, it's the dark arts of politics. And so who knows? Yeah, maybe this is all part of a cunning plan that they're going to come out in 18 months' time and say, hey, have we got some sweeteners for you? But you treat Queenslanders like mugs and they will mug you at the ballot box.
Yeah, all right. I appreciate your time. I know you're busy. Thanks very much, Ted.
And for yours, Bill. All the best.